Well, hi everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube art tutorial channel. I'm a professional artist working from my studio in Essex in the UK and painting plein air in the countryside. I've been asked to paint a picture of Galleywood village sign. So I've put the drawing down onto my watercolour paper, as you can see, and now I'm going to start to paint. Well, it's wet outside, so working in the studio. Well, I've got one or two ideas what I think I'm going to do with this one, but anyway, let's give it a go. I've damped up all my colours just in case, not sure which ones I'm going to use yet, and I'm going to pick around the outside edge of the sign because the background is going to be wet in wet. That's the way I want my thinking with this one. I want to treat that wet into wet, and so I'm dampening certainly the top half of this of the Galleywood sign. It obviously depicts the race course that is such a feature of Galleywood, in as much as there used to be a race course here. It's quite a thing that, and of course there are still lots of horses and some stables around the village. Right, now I'm going to start the top of the board with some blue, which is going in there like that, and that will spread down nicely. Yep, that's okay. And I'm going to put some red in to give a sense of light into this top right hand corner, and that's just a cadmium red. That's what that is going in there. Got the board at a bit of an angle, as you can probably see, so that's useful. Good, that's looking fine. Now there are lots of trees in the background, so I want to try and incorporate that. It's actually positioned at Piper's Tie, which is a small piece of land that also has the village post office, sorry, the village post box, plus sorry, I'm just having a think through here. The village post box plus the phone box and the old village pump, which is quite important feature too. Now we have trees in the background, so these I'm going to put in a very blurred fashion, because I think it makes sense not to have a real sort of any major detail in the background. It's my thinking behind this study, really. It's a study as much as anything of this lovely village sign. So I've used raw sienna with Windsor blue or Prussian blue, whichever. Not really too concerned. I'm putting a little bit of burnt umber with that now, just to darken that green, because I want the green to be fairly dark around the sign itself. I want some of the sky to show through. That's it. Yeah, that seems to be working fine. Now I'm putting a little lemon yellow with that. I want the greens to show up a little bit sort of fresher, because I like this to be more of a summer sort of feel rather than autumn or winter. So the greens do need to have some nice warmth in there. Go. Now I'm adding a bit more brown now as I come down. I have masked the side with tape, so all being well that'll hold up. And yeah, that's a bit more colour there. Good thing is that the sign has rounded edges, so it tends to run the paint down, which is what I'm looking to do really on this one. Now as we come down, just adding a little more blue in the mix. Allow that to run down, just let that bleed through. Nice bit of brown there. Let's just have a touch of darker stuff this side. There we are. Now I'm picking around the base of the sign there, like that. Picking around this side too. Slightly more bluer, slightly lighter colour. There we go. Seems to be working quite well. I'm gradually bringing that down now. Nice and sort of blurred background. That's what I'm looking for the initial start in any case. There you go. Bringing that right down now. Allow that paint to run down nicely. Right, then we clean the brush because we're getting to some sort of ground level here. So I'm going to use raw sienna for that ground level to start. So I'm rubbing in raw sienna vertically. Now, not horizontal, vertical, like that. A bit more there, yeah, that's it. Now, a little bit more. I'm going to the dry paper now, and that way the paint should hold at that particular position. If you're on wet into wet, as you can see, it sort of like floods, but when you get onto dry paper it holds. Got to work fairly quick because I don't want it to dry really. And as we come into the foreground, I'm adding cadmium lemon to this foreground. Now just slowly introducing that, because I'm trying to get some summer greens in here, like that. There's some darker stuff now going in, bit of the colour from the top really. And can we show some light on some of these grasses at the base somewhere? Always a good idea to show up some grasses at the base. Not very, you know, it's quite often that these objects don't get trimmed around the base as they should do. So good. So that's the first painting process. Now I've got quite a move to the smaller mop brush now, because I want to show just before it dries, some overhanging dark branches, because that depicts what I can see there. And if I can just catch it before it dries, fairly dense that side, that top corner, and these are becoming a little bit more defined because that's drying, which is really all the better for that, because that's going to show a sense of light and a bit more definition in the branches there. There we go. So that's what I'm doing. I'm really creating an impression of something in the background that's creating, you know, these trees in the background. It's creating these lovely branch effects. Going to have some this side, still a little damp, but not too concerned about that. We'll leave some gaps. That's it. These are the dark overhanging branches that from the trees that actually stand in and around this sign. So that's the basic principle anyway. And as you come down, you get less and less because the branches are beginning to hang down a little less. It's just nice to have some little touches here and there. I think, I've got a feeling that's about all I'm going to do with that, funny enough. Let's allow that to dry. Now I'm going to bring up, there are some trees there, and I want to bring up the feeling that we've got some branches there, or at least some trunk work. And so I'm putting in a trunk this side here that goes up into the tree like that, up into the leaf work and down, because that's what's there. Quite a substantial tree, that. Bit of meat to it, if you get what I mean. And we'll also see it there coming through. I'll put some smaller branches in as we go. A bit more there, like that. And another one heading off up there. So that probably is all I need to do to that at this particular stage. Don't want to put any smaller branches in. Maybe perhaps there is a branch coming out there, and let's have a wider trunk area to that, because they have been here a few years, I think, these trees, so they're reasonably meaty in trunk wise. Yeah, that'll be fine. Yeah, now I'm going to clean that brush very quickly, thoroughly clean. It's not completely clean, but, and I'm going to just allow that trunk to settle into the ground. It actually sits nicely into the ground if you soften the lower part. I'm going to use raw sienna over the complete board because it has a yellowy feel to the outer edge, like a rim and the writing, and put a bit of lemon yellow with that as well, just to give it that extra bit of brightness, really, that I think the outside edge would have. Just being careful to keep away from that the outside edge at this stage, because I don't want that to bleed in, because if it's still a little damp then it'll bleed in. That's what I'm afraid of. But overall I think that's held okay, and that is the actual colour of the outside edge. But once that dries off, then I'll paint in the darker areas then. Now the wood it's attached to, it's a little bit of aging to it, so it's burnt umber. It's got a bit of blue in there too, so I'm going to use ultramarine, a little bit of ultramarine in that. And let's get a light wash onto that to start. You know, we can always go darker with watercolour, but you can't go lighter. So that's why we start light first. Always the best thing to do when using watercolour. We'll burn umber down there. There you go. Give it a bit more strength. A little more strength of brown. That's better. Yeah, that should. Now it's bleeding up into the thingy there, but that's not a problem. Well, not at this stage anyway. Leave a bead of white paper down that right hand edge, because we have sunlight coming from that direction, and finish with some spiky bits where the grasses stick up. Get rid of all that there, and didn't want it to go like that, so what I'm going to do, not really matters, but let's see if I can lift a bit of that away. There we go, by using just a damp brush. There we are, so it doesn't bleed up into that, the actual writing part of the sign. Should have given it a little bit longer really, but there you go. That's how it is. There we are. That all now needs to be allowed to dry. While that is drying, I'm going to put in some branches now, because I want to possibly get these in before it completely dries, because it's it really is quite important, the tree, so we need to have sort of a feeling of branches coming out in this lower area as well as further up. Let's give just a hint, some branches coming out there. That's it, just put that into the greens like that, pull that through. Yep, that's okay. So we've got the shape right. Not really a great deal, but there may be just one just hanging down like that. It's quite often the case. There we go. Let's not overdo that. Right, I think that's dry enough. So now I'm going to paint in the blue sky. in the sign, but I'm painting around the outside edge and the because there is a rim around the outside edge there like that, and I'm leaving the church spire unpainted too, if I can. Yeah, I think I've done that okay. Now I'm picking around the top, just shape the brush up again, make certain we're getting the right shape, because the brush is an important part of the painting process. A lot of people say to me, well, yeah, but you know, the brush always shapes, always got a nice brush. Well, yeah, but you have to work at it. It's not an exact science, as any artist would tell you. So brush is important, but you need to know how to use it, really. You need to be a master of your tools, and if you are, it makes painting a heck of a lot easier. And that means understanding what the tools will do and also what they won't do. And sometimes it's more important what they won't do than what they will do. Because if you try and make a tool, a brush, work in a way that it just never will, then obviously you're not going to succeed. These images that are left, this is the keen hall that is left in the background there, and that I've painted many times, but not as a you know, I'm painting from a painting basically, which is what the board is. So that's the blue sky. Now to that I'm putting a little bit of yellow that I've already had there, because I want this bit of the yellow there, because this is going to be my green grass. Take a bit more of that blue there we go, a bit more of that yellow there. I like to try and use other colour, you know, colours that I've used and not just the complete fresh colours. And let me see. Right, now this is the green for the race course. There are a couple of figures depicted there, so that's interesting in itself. We have the horse's legs that I'd like to leave unpainted at this stage, but whether that's going to be possible right the way through, I don't know. But at this stage, leave a bit of light on them. Depicts the horse galloping, so it's on a gallop, but it should work okay. Not brilliant at horses, but one has to do one's best when given this sort of subject. So let's hope I can get that image fairly well. painted. You know, it's a depiction of the village, as I say, and everything that goes on or has gone on over the years in the village. So that's quite interesting to me. It's nice to understand what village was like all those years ago when we had the race course here, of course. There's the white post going in. And then we finish on the outside edge of that. There we go. Good. Right, this is probably the most difficult part. I want to paint all the lettering that's in yellow, leave that the backing colour. So I've got to pick around the writing, which is easier said than done. As I say, using masking fluid is not my favourite way of doing things, so I tend not to. I just think it spoils the overall feel of it, you know. It's so much better if you can just paint it. Right, there's the G for me, for Galleywood. It won't be perfect. Now we're coming to the A. And I'm going to work my way along like that. Well, I think that's generally got the idea of the writing. Yep, so that's looking okay. Now for the horse, I'm going to use the main horse, going to use burnt sienna. Just feel that's quite fitting. Like that. Don't want to go over the edges too early, because if you do, you've got to try somehow to lift it away, which is not the easiest thing in the world to do. So there you go. See if we can get the feeling of a racehorse. That's what we're looking for. Feeling of a racehorse, really. Fairly lean sort of horses, for obvious reasons. So I'll get a nice clean drawing of that. And I'm going to do the legs now. These are probably the hardest part. Of a horse to do, is the legs, particularly when the horse is meant to be running. So wish me luck. I think it's got the general idea of a gallop. I think that's generally the sort of thing we're looking for. And while that's drying off, I'm going to move into these grasses. And I've left them unpainted, certain areas, because I want to try and get the light on a couple of those, or at least a lot of them. You know, the edge, the spiky edges that are lit up in sunlight. But of course they finish with a surround around the writing area, like that. There we go. So that's the grasses in that side. We've also got some grasses here that are darker, and we do have some areas unpainted that goes, I would presume they are the daffodil. I know they have a nice show of daffodils around the village, and I just presume that that's what's being depicted there. So I'm going to leave some areas and then add some lemon yellow. There we go. Now we do have some greenery in the background here to depict the common area, which obviously is where the racecourse was. So that's going to be green. Picking around the horse in the distance. There, that needs to be a little darker than that, I think. Yep, does. And then the green in the front. There, we've got the horse there, and I've got to leave the railings unpainted, because there again the railings around the racecourse are quite an important feature in Galleywood. So it's always important that we show that. There we are. Yeah, I think that's fine. I think we'll get away with that. It's all about getting away with it, really. That's what art is mainly all about. Now I'm going in darker here now to pick up. I'm going to paint around the figure on the horse, the real dark. Let's try and go around the figure on this horse, the head, back, and it's quite a darker area too there. Jagged outside edge, and then we come down into that area that bleeds away because it's still wet, which is what I'm wanting it to do. Leave a bead of white on the top of that there. Other than that, got a jagged edge around the top, around where the church is. Then we have the figure on the horse. Then the arms, and then of course the horse is actually got a black mane. So I'm leaving that unpainted at this stage, trying to depict that. Like that. There you go. And then we're coming down the horse's face and through to an area here that's, try and get in fairly freely, like that. As far as an area there, and after that we need to change colour. It depicts a wooded area, so we're going to be somewhat lighter, somewhat richer in colour there. Then at the end of it we'll put in some some trunk areas. Blend that in the bottom there a little bit. There we go. Those are the two figures I can touch in. I was just going to put some trunk work in there, but it's beginning to come along quite nicely. Now the figure has got a blue, very light blue, so let's take a little bit of that off, be quite light, like that. Oh, and the arms, they are also blue. Like that. That's it. We've got burnt umber for the saddle, which has to go in like that. And then the boots. Boots will go in shortly. Now I just need a very dark grey, so I'm using ultramarine. Burnt umber and ultramarine is my preferred mix for grey. Could use Payne's grey I wanted, but it's a bit more subtle than that. It's just a little bit more sort of delicate with our black. Now we have a black tail, that's sweeping out at the back because the horse is nipping along at a rate of knots. Then we have a black mane there. So I've left white so we can show a little bit of white area to that. I've also got black riding boots, like that, and a foot in stirrup. Well, I think that works. It's bled a little bit into the saddle area, but not too concerned. And is that horse dry? Not quite, so I'll leave that for this stage. Oh, a red cap, a red riding cap. That's interesting. Let's take a little bit off. That's it. go. Look at that. Head down, ready for action. Here we go. I'm going to use burnt sienna for the background. It's basically the old keen hall. That's what that is. So we'll put that in burnt sienna, like that. Then we'll weaken that and paint in the roof area, because we do have some tone values there to think about, lights and darks. Go. So that's the keen hall. Then I'm going to use a little bit of light red for the frontage and the side wall, which will then we will pick around the horse in the background. There we go. Now I'm going to paint in the shadow work for the horse in the foreground. Bit of shadow under the neck there, and there is a little bit down this underneath the neck there. We'll soften this shortly. Up to the hind quarters there. Up into there. That's it. A bit down the back edge here. That could all be dark really there. That under the leg there, here, all very suggestive, of course. Then we just soften that just to keep it from running too far. And also soften that down the neck there. Go. Keep it all fairly soft. There we go. Good. Not too much more to do. Now I'm going to do a bit of sign writing, so I'm going to put in a bit of dark stuff in places, because this will help the signage lettering. This is basically what this does. The light's coming this way, so we'll put a shadow down there. That's good. And now I do a little bit for, because that stands away, a shadow there, you'll have a shadow there, you'll have a shadow there, and also down there. So this is more or less sign writing, really. It's about what it amounts to. Underneath there, down there, and down there, underneath there, down there, down there. Yeah, we would probably see something down there and down there, down round here and there, round that side, down that side, and round the top there. There we are. That helps to spell the word Galleywood. Now there's every chance you'll see a shadow running across the foreground, there is another tree out of picture. So there's every chance that a shadow will cast down there like that. This is the fun bit. Well, I think it is anyway. Then you may very well have another small shadow there, another little shadow there, and it's dappled light from a tree that's running out of to the right hand side. Then you'll see that. Now, to justify that, we're going to have a shadow here, and that will come across like that, a bit broken on the outside edge. That'll shadow a lot. Put a bit of green with that now. There we go. That will shadow a lot of that grasses, but not all of it. Some of those grasses are going to be left unpainted. And then this then sneaks away like that, but of course it will still have remnants of that tree casting a shadow in the foreground. And I'm going to deepen that shadow up with a red, which is always my way of doing things. As most of you know, that follow my videos regularly, it's that red shadow, and also I'm going to pick up some red tints standing up in the grasses on the back edge. There we go. And that needs leaving alone now. Well, there you have it. As you can see, I've peeled away the surrounding tape, and yeah, so that is another commission. It's the Galleywood village sign on Piper's Tie green here in Galleywood. I hope you've enjoyed watching. If you have, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you will receive notifications when I upload my next video. Thank you for watching.